So we are in First Samuel. We are in lesson 6, and so we're doing lesson 6b today. Last week we covered chapter 21, and today we're going to cover 22 and 23. We also covered a couple of Psalms, Psalm 34, 56, and 142. And those Psalms encompassed kind of David's journey here. Talked about a few things. We have the Philistines seizing him, and then him in front of Abimelech. And then we have a prayer when he's in the cave. And so that kind of preempted this lesson, or part B, because in 22 we find ourselves in the cave. But in 21 we have David fleeing from Saul. And so first he goes to the priest. He flees to Nob, and he goes to Ahimelech, and he lies to him. He says that Saul sent him on a journey, and he didn't. But the priest gives him bread, and he gives him Goliath's sword. There is no mention of Ahimelech inquiring of the Lord for David. But we see that Doeg, is that it? Doeg, he was there, the Edomite was there, and we're going to see how that plays out in 22. So then David flees to Achish, the king of Gath. So he flees to the Philistines, the enemy, and the servants recognize him. Is this not David? Did they not sing and of this one as they danced? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. So we see David is very well known. In this song, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Really shows the confidence of the people being behind David, more than Saul. David has certainly proved himself in battle, certainly proved himself in character, as has Jonathan. And we see this and really come to fruition in these next two chapters. So verses 1 and 2. So David departed from there and escaped into the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's household heard of it, they went down there to him, and everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became captain over them. Now there was about 400 men with him. So insights into 1 and 2.
Well, you have to wonder why he went to the priests. And then partly, like their response is, there's just a lot of things that aren't said. So had Samuel told the priests about David being next in line? I mean, did they kind of know that, but we're keeping it quiet? So did they just give him some automatic respect because of who he was going to be? Or what, there's just so many things you don't know, I think, in this one. And when it says everyone who was in distress, it seemed like there were probably a lot of people in that position right then, because Saul was pretty unstable, and it had to be more than just David who knew that. So I imagine there were more than David that was sort of afraid for their life when it came to Saul. And then David had to be pretty rattled from what he just came from. So it's like there's so much going on, and yet so much that's not said, that we don't know.
Right. It says that, yeah. So in 21, it says that the priest was afraid. And so it doesn't say why. And like you said, did Samuel tell them? And so they knew. Um, and then some commentators are like, well, it was just a look and the countenance of David, or, there's all kinds of speculation, but I mean, it's really, there's a lot that's not said. Um, but you're kind of looking at this as far as how people are responding and reacting. And like I said, there's kind of a little bit of, you're kind of getting a sense that everybody kind of knows.
Yeah.
um
I
yeah.
think David's completely falling apart here. So it's like, I know there's times in my life when you feel like you're falling apart is when reach out. I don't know, maybe, you look at the Psalms and his crying out to the Lord. So it's like I think God sometimes puts you in the wilderness coming from the Old Testament. But
Hmm.
so I think he's completely falling apart here in that the reason why is God's getting him where he wants him to be, for lack of a better word.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we thought, I'm
He's
sorry.
definitely, I say he's definitely, it's definitely, you can just feel the despair here.
Right. So I mean, David, he finds out, yeah, okay, Jonathan, they have their plan of how Jonathan's going to impart information. And so, we just have that really sad part where at the end of 20, where, David's off running for his life. He's departing from Jonathan. We think never to see him again, but we see in this lesson they do see each other briefly. But then it's never again after that. And then he's just running. And so first he runs to the priest. And it doesn't seem like a bad place to run to. But then next thing you know, okay, he's, picking up weapons, and then he's running to the enemy. And so we talked about that picture. And now it's like, okay, now we're in a cave. And it's kind of like whenever you mention you're in that situation that just seems really bad, really hopeless, and it's like, what are you running to? And sometimes God just says, okay, we're gonna go into a cave now, and you're gonna have some time, and this is what's gonna happen. And more than likely, that's when all these psalms, the psalms that we looked at last week, and that's probably whenever they really came into fruition. Um, was there in the cave, where we kind of have a reset because something happens in this cave. Um, so yeah, there's different pictures here. He's on the run. Now he's in the cave, and now we have a reset. So last week when we hit 21, David's kind of making all the wrong decisions, just kind of freaking out. Um, but here we are in the cave, and we're gonna have a reset. The other thing is, um, you guys pointed out everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented. It goes back to, they asked for a king, the procedure of the king was going to take the best from you. And so we see people in distress, people in debt, and people discontented. We have a really great example. We've had some examples before where we see that Saul's not really taking care of the people, he's taking from the people. And we have an example in this lesson where he's not taking care of the people. Um, he takes care of some people, which is interesting. But anyway, he's just not, he is not a good ruler. He's not a good leader. And we see these people coming to David. And last week I had mentioned, this, is it this one? Yes. Psalm 34, whenever he says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears." They looked to him and were radiant, and their faces never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of the troubles. So this psalm goes into, you see others in there. And so you see this picture of David not only leading these people that are coming to him and joining with him basically against Saul, but leading them in the Lord, leading them in righteousness, to where we get from, he's not necessarily alone, but we have the we, and from his example, people are looking at him and he's leading them. And so we have this twist and this turn in the cave, from David kind of losing that confidence that he had in the Lord to go up against Goliath, to David coming back to his senses and regaining confidence in the Lord. So 1 through 2 just said David escapes and he became captain over those gathered to him. So 3 through 5, and David went there from there to Mitzpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and my mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me." Then he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. And the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold, depart and go into the land of Judah." So David departed and went into the forest of Hereth. So insights into 3 through 5.
Showing a strong trust in the Lord here. Honor thy father and mother came to my mind. He's looking out after, I guess, probably knows with Saul's being unhinged that they would kill his parents.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think he's also making sure to honor his parents. And then I just have trust in God here. And then I also have something about the leadership difference between Saul and David that's kind of starting to come into play, of looking how, the leadership, I mean, definitely a difference in the leadership qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the men, how God is making warriors out of, he likes to take the distressed ones or the downtrodden ones and build them into something, and how they're following David. So those are kind of the points that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking too, I mean, you see God here and how it just reminds me of how he sees a thread of meekness or belief or hope in people, and he's right there to help. Because, I mean, God didn't just decide to show up on his own. God told him to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So God is still taking care of David, even though David has been freaking out and not making good choices.
Mm-hmm.
But God is still trying to show him that he's still there with him.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And there's a distinct difference here, where, I mean, and we see replete throughout David's whole life, because we've read the Bible before, that, I mean, it's kind of like these ups and downs, the peaks and the valleys, the mountaintop moments and the low moments. And David isn't a perfect person, but we see that he has a perfect God, and he's a man after God's own heart, um because he has the humility towards God, and he like, whenever he sins with Bathsheba, whenever it's called sin, he agrees that it's sin, and he, takes the steps, and he's weeping because he committed that sin. Whereas Saul, whenever Samuel went to Saul and was like, "Hey, this is sin, I hear the bleating of sheep," and Saul's like, "I did what he said to do." It's like, okay, well, just distinct difference in the leadership here. So not, yeah, I mean, God's provision, he's bringing people to him, to David. So he's not alone. He has community. Um, and also he's bringing him a prophet. He brought him Gad. Um, to inquire of the Lord, to speak the word of the Lord. And I mean, we also see David speaking with the Lord, inquiring of the Lord directly. Um, so JD actually has it's kind of like the four pillars, like he calls it the legs on a table, as far as like are if you're how to tell if you're within the will of God, and it's does it align with God's word, number one, God's providence, number two, and then also confirmation from other believers. Like you'll just get a word from somebody that, it's like only God would have known that was going on. And I can't remember what number four is off the top of my head. But he kind of brought that into his sermon notes on this one too. And so we see Gad being one of those pillars here. Um, but we're seeing this turn in David, where last chapter freaking out on the run, he gets in that cave and gets right, and now it's like he's honoring his parents, he's taking care of them. um and he goes to the king of Moab, and Ruth was a Moabite, that was his great grandmother. Also, and we see that they stay with him the whole time that David was in the stronghold. I looked up stronghold, it means fortress. And but now David's told, he he's told to depart and go to the land of Judah. And so now we see David going into the forest of Hereth. So David leaves his parents with king of Moab, and God tells David to depart the stronghold. So now we're back to Saul. Then Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered. Now Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree, on the height, with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. And Saul said to his servants who stood around him, "Hear now, O Benjamites, will the son of Jesse also give to all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? For all of you have conspired against me, so that there is no one who discloses to me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is none of you who is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me, to lie in ambush, as it is this day." Then Doeg the Edomite, who was standing by the servants of Saul, said, "I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine." Oh boy, here we go. um, so thoughts on this one?
Okay,
Well,
I'm just gonna say he is under a tree again. I'm just gonna say that.
New York.
he likes the shade.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Like,
Oh my, go ahead, Gloria.
yeah.
I think also this Doeg, we keep coming up how the Edomites they keep plaguing Israel in one way or another.
Mhm.
And Doeg is just another one in the line of many, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of really packed. Yeah, so he's under the tamarisk tree. And I went off on a little rabbit trail about that one because I was like, oh, is it because it says the tamarisk tree. Um, so I was like, oh, is it the one that I think it was Abraham planted one or something like that, but it's not the same one. Um, but tamarisk trees were kind of a big deal because they were very slow growing, and they really wouldn't provide you shade in your lifetime, but in subsequent generations' lifetime. So they were just kind of a big deal. But he's under, it was a pomegranate tree earlier. Now he's under the tamarisk tree. He has a spear in his hand. Um, so
That has to be, I mean, I feel like that symbolism for just the demonic possession that this dude is, I mean, it's just progressing and progressing and progressing for the ungodly spirit that he has. And then I also had a note on Doag just kind of misleading Saul by not using all his words,
uh-huh.
by not, clarifying. I mean, he just kind of, it's like he pandered to him. Like he's like, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, which doesn't end well. So,
Well, right. And there's a part in here where Saul is like, we see it's basically bribing. He's given his servants fields and vineyards and made them commanders and things like that. And he's like, well, is this, is David, is the son of Jesse going to do that for you?
yeah. Yeah, that's the difference in the leadership quality for sure, as to where David's after God's own heart, but David is definitely leading through faith and by God's plan, and Saul is just unhinged and you know he probably gives him, what can you do for me is his leadership style. I'll give you this, but I need this from you. And sounds like a horrible, horrible, like Gloria said, just the way he's treating his people are terrible. It sounds like you can kind of hear that in the words.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's like, well, he's pretty much, I mean, I'm just going to call it bribing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be around him. And then we see the people suffering. And but at the same time, these people that are around him, like, they stick up for Jonathan. Um, they don't tell him, he's like, you don't tell me that my son made a covenant with like, it's just such a strange reality. And then he's making this statement about the things that he's provided for these people, and then we see Doug speak up, or Doeg. Um, and he's like, okay, well, yeah, I'll give you some information. And
All the while he has a spear in his hand. So it's like you need to be very careful on how you word that information, right?
so
Oh, good.
yeah, I mean, it's like, whoo. And we see did I put the psalm here? Yes. And in Psalm 52, David says, this is about Doeg. Why do you boast in evil, you mighty man? The faithfulness of God endures all day long. Your tongue devises destruction like a sharp razor, you worker of deceit. You love evil more than good, lies more than speaking what is right. You love all words that devour, you deceitful tongue. But God will break you down forever. He will snatch you up and tear you away from your tent and uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous will see and fear, and they will laugh at him, saying, behold the man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and was strong in his evil desire. But as for me, I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the faithfulness of God forever and ever. I will praise you forever because you have done it, and I will wait on your name, for it is good in the presence of your godly ones. Um, so she brought that in there into the lesson, but we see he speaks of Doeg trusting in riches. and he would not make God his refuge. Like he wouldn't trust in God, but he would trust in his riches, and he had evil desires. And she brought this psalm in too, because later on we see that, okay, Saul is gonna have all these, people killed because of this situation, because of what Doag says to him, and David's reaction whenever he finds out. And again, God is David's refuge. I mean, definitely David lying to the priest added into this, because had the priest known the problem, they could have protected themselves. But they didn't know the problem. David told him something different. So we're going to see differences between David and Saul here. David's leadership style is he takes responsibility and he ends up taking care of things. And he leans in the Lord even in his sin. So okay. Anything else on 6 through 10? I just have Saul says to his servants, all of you conspired against me, and Doag conspires against Ahimelech.
The tamarisk tree is kind of interesting. If you get into it, I don't remember a lot of details, but I know that it takes a very long time to grow, and it has some kind of a ability to absorb water at night. Absorbs moisture at night, so it's very cool during the day. It gives off that coolness from the water. So it's a good place to go for shade and
Yeah.
cool area. So not unusual that he would have gone there.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned with Abraham, a lot of foresight there in planning one.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of like, well, I don't know who planted the tree. I wasn't going to go that far once I was like, okay, it wasn't Abraham that planted that one. But yeah, it did act like a misting system during the day. Pretty much. And it was yeah, so the fact that it was called the tamarisk tree, I was like, okay, they're kind of a big deal. Um like people would have known where they were. So yeah, 11 through 13. Then the king sent someone to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's household, the priests who were in Nob, and all of them came to the king. And Saul said, listen now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, my lord. Saul then said to him, why have you and the son of Jesse conspired against me? And that you have given him bread and a sword, and inquired of God for him, so that he would rise up against me by lying in ambush as it is this day. Oh boy. Well, insights into this one.
Well, whenever we're in disobedience to God, there's consequences. And I think what David sees, or we'll see here, is the consequences of him not being in the will of God, with what he did with the priest. And there's a price to pay, a high price for them, and probably a lifetime of fighting the guilt of what he did for David.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like you said, whenever you're outside of God's will, there are consequences, and now we're gonna see the consequences. Um, And here we have Saul, just really, this is kind of a messy situation because it's like, okay, there's consequences from David's sin going on here. And then there's Saul just totally off the rails, totally unhinged, making these accusations that are, I mean, lies. He is the one that's conspiring against David. Nobody is conspiring against Saul. Um, I mean, it's like just unhinged upon unhinged. But the difference that we see here is who is after God's own heart, even though this is totally messy, and who is God with, even though this is totally messy. It's kind of like in Genesis, Sarah. She, like, whenever she hears that, yeah, she's gonna, she's sitting in the tent and she's overhearing, and she's like, she laughs when she hears that, she's gonna have a baby in her old age. And then she has a baby in her old age, and she goes and tells Abraham, you got to get rid of Ishmael, you got to send him and Hagar away, even though she's the one that started that whole thing. But God says to Abraham, your wife is right. Like, there's a whole, like, it was a total messy situation, but God sorted it out in the end. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, Sarah was always totally in the right, he called her out when she was wrong, but when she got right, I mean, it was just it was a totally messy situation, but there's always God's truth lining through that. And we see through David's psalm, he calls out Doeg's, the evil in Doeg, because that was like really just evil. He did that merely for riches and personal gain. But in that, David stands on the promise of God and the promise of Messiah and Christ imputed righteousness. So in that whole scenario, so you see that where is David's refuge when he sins? It's in God. Whereas Doeg and Saul, they're just carrying on with everything that they're doing. So there is no running to God for those two in this situation. So I just have Saul summons Ahimelech, 14 through 16. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who among all your servants is as faithful as David, even the king's son-in-law, who is captain over your guard and is honored in your house? Did I just begin to inquire of God for him today? Far be it from me. Do not let the king impute anything to his servant or any of the household of my father, for your servant knows nothing at all of this whole affair. But the king said, you shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's household. So, thoughts on this one?
I think we see the the evilness of the adversary,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how he uses people.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just using Saul, and um, I mean, you see it today too. He just uses people. When he's done with them, they die. Um, you know, it's really him that's motivating all this evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, his possession is showing. But it's interesting that he's kind of neglected Israel, just kind of what you're reading between the lines, that the way he's leading, and he's not willing to go to battle for the people against Israel, but yet he wants to kill the people of God.
Mm-hmm.
So that again leads to, I feel like when God put the evil spirit our spirit not of God, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, onto him, it's growing in it's getting more I feel like it's progressing and getting more demonic as he goes on,
Yeah.
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's he hasn't rejected it. He hasn't rejected the lying spirit.
No, he's embracing it, it sounds like, or it's taking over. I don't know. Doesn't sound good.
Yeah, no, he is totally, totally convinced that he is the victim. He's totally convinced.
Well, that's another little devil whisper for you right there.
Like, yeah. I mean, he's like totally like just, on this, I'm the victim and all of these people are doing these things, and it's like, wait, what what? It's a lying spirit and he's listening to it and yeah, his emotions are following with it. He's sitting under a tree cooling off with a spear in his hand, waiting to do who knows what. And he's known to chunk spears at people. Like it's just he's just off the rails, just off the rails. And I mean, you pointed out something so right. He hasn't been willing to go into battle for Israel, but he will have no problem putting the priest to death.
Or telling his men to. He's not going to do it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
ordering it, which is another whole conversation.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, the priests are the people that are looking like, okay, so he's not really concerned. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
bad.
it's progress. I mean, it's progressing and getting worse and worse.
Yeah. So I just have Ahimelech, do not let the king impute this to a servant. And you notice the one thing that Ahimelech toggles on is he's like, I didn't inquire of the Lord. He didn't address anything else. He's like, I didn't inquire of the Lord for him. So that kind of leads me to think that Doeg added that on. Um, so and then I have just Saul, you shall surely die. Um, and the king said to the guards who were attending him, turn around and put the priests of the Lord to death, because their hand also is with David, because they knew he was fleeing and did not reveal it to me. But the servants of the king were not willing to put forth their hands to attack the priests of the Lord. Then the king said to Doeg, you turn around and attack the priest. And Doeg the Edomite turned around and attacked the priest, and he killed that day 85 men who wore the linen ephod. And he struck Nob, the city of the priest, with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and infants, also oxen, donkeys, and sheep he struck with the edge of the sword. Insights into that one.
He's possessed too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree.
And Saul allowed, like,
So it's just,
yeah,
that's just one devil spirit communicating with another one, They got
yeah,
the big plan.
yeah. No, Saul is like totally unhinged, and Doag is obviously not, and the two of them together, and here we have these poor people. Um, Saul says because they knew that David was fleeing, they didn't know that. These people are totally innocent, and Saul gives the order to put him to get death. His own servants won't do it. They're like, But this Doag guy, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And he went full force, not only with them, but the whole city of Nob, infants, women, children, you name it. It was just, and Saul's okay with this.
Ugh. And yeah, Doag, he definitely omitted. Well, if you remember, the priest was trembling, or the priest was, shaken or a little when David was there. So the priest kind of knew, because David did not. Now, David owns his part in it down the road, but Doag's part, his misleading, and then I'm sorry, babbling, but his misleading Saul. But then I wonder, would it even matter to Saul? You know what I mean? It was like Gloria said, between these two.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, no. And that's, I mean, and so there's a lot of there's a lot of application here. It's testing the spirits. Which spirit are you listening to? Testing the people around you, as far as like, are they speaking the word of, are they speaking truth into your life? Are they in agreement with the evil spirit speaking to you?
but
You
is the priest, I mean, when he asked, is a priest gonna, I mean, I know there are not, some priests that probably aren't good, but I mean, is it majority of the time, is a priest going to lie to you when he says, look, I didn't know this about David? So it's like not, that shows you his trust is certainly not in God's people or in God,
uh-huh.
because, he totally discounted that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, Saul's just going with what he wants to hear. Like,
And Doag is telling it to him because he wants the vineyard and whatever the heck else he's getting out of this. So his his brother demon spirit. So
yeah, and I mean, David calls it out in that psalm. He was trusting in his riches, because if he can get on Saul's side, then Saul's going to give him all the things that he gave his other servants. But also, if he knocks over the city of Nob, then he gets to raid it and take all their stuff and gather riches for himself. So this is just bad upon bad. Like, yeah, it's mm. So I just have the king's guards would not put the priest of the Lord to death, but Doag struck them. And then, but one son of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, came or escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day when Doag the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have brought about the death of every person in your father's household. Stay with me. Do not be afraid. For he who seeks my life seeks your life, for you are safe with me. All right, insights.
Well, on one level, this doesn't make sense. It's like, I'm the reason that your whole father's whole household is dead, so stay with me. You'll be safe. I mean, on the one side, it's like, yeah, okay. Um,
Well, I mean, it's
yeah,
interesting because, I mean, the son, he goes and he runs after David. Like, this is all over David, and he runs straight to David.
yeah,
But then David, I mean, he takes responsibility. He's
he
like,
owns his.
it's because of me. And, he's like, but I'll protect you, because this guy, he's not safe with Saul.
Yeah, where else does he have? I mean, if you think about it, where else does he have to go at this point?
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, I think David killed Goliath. You still have that. And, all in all, David's heart, I mean, I think they know David's heart is much different than Saul's. So I think that's, you know, I think between the two, where do you go? You're certainly not going to go to Saul.
no. And David takes responsibility. He's like, I've caused this, you know, he admits it. And then he's like, stay with me and I will protect you. And it seems like there would be a little cognitive disconnect, but whenever you look at the two, who are you going to trust?
Yeah.
I mean,
Not the guy under the tree. I'm just going to throw that out there.
no. So David definitely um not perfect. We see that. Nobody is. but we see that he's a man after God's own heart, and we're seeing the characteristics of that person. And then we see Saul, not a man after God's own heart, in the characteristics in that person. So I just have Abiathar escapes and flees to David. David says, "You are safe with me." And she gave you the cross reference in First Chronicles 12 of whenever the men came to David, and she did say that we're going to start doing some cross referencing in First Chronicles. I was wondering, and then I didn't really get into, I wanted to look at that a little more in Chronicles though, because there was another part above there, but I was like, okay, that's for another time. We're not timelining First Chronicles. So but there was another part I was interested in. But in 17 it says David went out to meet them, because it talks about these guys that came to the stronghold to David. And David went out to meet them and said to them, "If you come peacefully to help me, my heart shall be united with you. But if to betray me to my enemies, since there is no wrong in my hands, may the God of our fathers look on it and decide." Then the Spirit covered Amasai like clothing, the chief of the 30, and he said, "We are yours, David, and are with you, son of Jesse. Peace, peace to you, and peace to him who helps you. Indeed, your God helps you." Then David received them and made them captains of the troops. And so we see this confession of these people that came to him, that, indeed your God helps you. So people see the difference. Yes, this is a bad thing. David lied to the priest. It ended up in their death, unfortunately, at the hands of a very evil man and a very evil king. But there's difference here. People are seeing it. And they have their trust in David because David has his trust in God, and they see what God does for David. And then there's also just that psalm that we covered back in Psalm 34, where we see David, like these people joining in, and it's this leading of the people to God. So we don't see that in Saul. So it's just seeing character differences here. Oh, chapter theme: none is sorry for Saul, but the distressed, indebted, and discontented have a captain in David. So we see this big contrast here in scripture. Anything on 22 before we head into 23? So, then they told David, saying, "Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are plundering the threshing floors." So David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And the Lord said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and deliver Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more than if we go to Keilah against the ranks of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of the Lord once more, and the Lord answered him and said, "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines into your hand." So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, and he led away their livestock and struck them with great slaughter. Thus David delivered the inhabitants of Keilah. All right, insights into this one.
Well, David is back to asking God for his guidance. So,
Mhm.
it seems like he's definitely back on track. And God's giving him the victory.
Yes.
In verse 5.
Mhm. Yeah, so we've seen a change here. It's like David was on the run. He ran to the priest. He got, ran to the enemy. He gets in a cave, gets right, and then we see the same David who slew Goliath. Um, he's back. As far as it's like he take, all these men are joining him. He's leading them. He takes responsibility for this one remaining son of the priest. He's inquiring of the Lord now. He's going up against the Philistines with only 400 men. But he's trusting the Lord. He inquired of the Lord. The Lord said, go down. I will give the Philistines into your hand, and they went, and that's what happened. So the David that slew Goliath, he's back. Um, and all it took was, getting in that cave, getting with, you know,
We all
get,
need a cake every now and then. So
yes.
his mission is, with all of that being said, and then his mission is going and protecting the people, the God's people, because they're stealing their food, their grain, because I kind of looked into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see Saul's mission, who only thing as he's still progressing down his craziness, the only thing he cares about is murdering David. So it's like getting the leadership contract.
Yeah. And so the question is, like, why did they come to David and not Saul?
Because he's under a tree with a spear in his hand.
you know, it's
Yeah,
like the Philistines are attacking, and so it's like, okay, and nobody's thinking Saul's gonna do anything.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he was a coward against the Philistines with Goliath. We also saw whenever the Philistines had come up that one time, and it was actually Jonathan that went and overtook that garrison, and he would only like summon the men to war after that, and then he took credit himself. And yeah, having here, he's so consumed with chasing David, he can't even protect his own country. I mean, you brought up like this was their whole year of work. This was their livelihood, this harvest. And the Philistines are just like coming in and attacking them and plundering the harvest, like the whole year's of work. Um, so yeah, this is kind of a big deal. So I just have David delivers Keilah from the Philistines. And now it came about when Abiathar, the son of Hamelech, fled to David at Keilah that he came down with an ephod in his hand. When it was told Saul that David had come to Keilah, Saul said, God has delivered him into my hand. For he shut himself in by entering a city with double gates and bars. So Saul summoned all the people for war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. Now David knew that Saul was plotting evil against him, and he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. Then David said, O Lord God of Israel, your servant has heard for certain that Saul is seeking to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Will the men of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down just as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. Then David said, will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will surrender you. Then David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah, and they went wherever they could go. When it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, he gave up the pursuit. David stayed in the wilderness and the strongholds and remained in the hill country and the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. Insights to 6 through 14.
Well, it seems like some of the men are just like in it for whatever is best for them at the time. I mean, they were with Saul, then with David, now they're leaving David, you know. Um,
Are you talking about Keelah, the men of Keelah?
yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was kind of like, oh, well, yeah, David delivers them, but then it's like God says, yeah, they're going to deliver you into the hands of Saul. And I mean, yeah, that's not good, but one of the things is, I mean, remember what Saul did to the priests, and Saul he wasn't just coming, it says in there that he was going up to war against the city. Um yeah, to go down to kill, to besiege David and his men. Saul is seeking to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's not good that they would give up David, who just, defended them, but at the same time, it's, these, yeah. And David never takes revenge on him. He never, this never comes up again, even when David's king. So, I do have in here, now Saul goes to war against the city who was just raided by the Philistines. It's just kind of like more like he's gonna go besiege this city that was just raided by the Philistines, and it's just like more upon more upon more. He's just so unhinged. Just not. He doesn't care about the people at all. Um, it's just a thing from Charles Spurgeon here from commentary. Says, observe David's anxiety for the city rather than for himself. Saul had destroyed Nob for sheltering him, and he might do the same to Keilah, and generous spirits cannot bear to bring evil upon others. So that was just a little insight from commentary. But anything else about this? What about Saul saying God has delivered him into my hand?
That's hilarious. I mean, we're just gonna go with that.
Like,
Yeah, okay, Saul.
yeah, it's like which God? The God of the heavens or the God of this world? Yeah.
Exactly. Go back to your tree because um so I had a question. So the Lord will surrender you. Okay, so God tells God tells David
mm-hmm.
that that they will surrender you. And then David said to his men, but then God did not deliver him to his hand. So there was definitely a change there, right? Or did I read that wrong?
Well, so David was, so Saul's he's going to Keilah. He's going to destroy the city to get to David.
Hmm.
And David is inquiring, are they going to give me up? And
Okay.
the Lord saying, yes, they will. In the end, they will. And so David, he leaves the city and thus saves the city from Saul.
Right. And so then he's telling Saul, so he did not deliver him to Saul's hand. I read that backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm back. I'm back on track. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and we see that. So yeah, Saul saying God has delivered him into my hand. And
And
then we
Saul
see,
saying, no, no, we did not.
yes. So yeah, David's inquiring, he's like, will they give me up? And God's like, yes, they will. And so David, he flees, and in his fleeing saves the city. Um, we now see that David has 600 men. So he's from 400 to 600. So it's just gathering more people around him. Um, and yes, um, So David is running around in the wilderness and the strongholds. Strongholds means fortress, and he's just running around being chased by Saul. I did see a commentary, and I thought it was really fitting because now we see once he got out of the cave, once he got, he got right in the cave, he's out of the cave, he's running around in the wilderness, hard pressed. It's like a picture of you when you come to Christ and you come into salvation, and then you get to go run around and be hard pressed and have your trials and tribulations and have your sanctification process. It's kind of a picture of that. But I don't know if it was Spurgeon. I don't know. But in the sheepfold, in the fields, um, God made David a man after his own heart, and in the wilderness, he made him a king. So we see David's running around in the wilderness, but he's making kingly decisions in his care and his looking out for people. So we see he took responsibility for what happened to the priest of Nob, but he's taking responsibility for the one that escaped and is putting him under his protection. So Saul can't get to him. We see that he saves this city from the Philistines, um, and he protects them by leaving as well. I mean, yes, he's fleeing for his own life because they're going to give him up, but essentially he's also protecting them. And he does not come up against them, um, for the fact that they would have given him up. Um, so we're just seeing David through all this really being made king. God's just taking him on that journey to kingly decisions. Um, Anything else before we hit covenant again? The 15. Now David became aware that Saul had come out to seek his life while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Haresh. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Haresh and encouraged him in God. Thus he said to him, do not be afraid, because the hand of Saul my father will not find you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you. And Saul my father knows that also. So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed at Horesh while Jonathan went to his house. Insights into this one.
Well, Jonathan shows himself, I think his true colors here when it says that he didn't just, I mean, that could have been a word of prophecy that he gave to David, because it says it was in God, sure, but it certainly could have been. But he's not focused on the five senses, he's focused on God. And he's just, I think, showing his true colors on where he's coming from and what kind of a friend he really is to David, and what kind of a bond they have with each other. And also some of his fortitude in, I mean, knowing your father is trying to kill this person, and knowing what your father said about these other people, about you, like you're not even telling me when my son helps him flee, and yet he had the courage to go out there and encourage his friend. So.
Yeah, so I mean, and it says he goes back to his own house, so obviously he's not running around with Saul. Like he's just like, yeah, like not participating in it, even though, I mean, not participating in evil. He recognizes the Lord. He is a man after God's own heart. Um, he recognizes David as king, and he says, "And I will be next to you," meaning I will support you. Um, and I'm sure that David would have put Jonathan in the inner circle. Um, and the interesting thing is, as he says, and Saul, my father, knows that also. So cat's out of the bag. We kind of been like it's kind of like it's almost like this is a known thing that David is the next king. But Saul, deep down, knows that all of these things are going to come to fruition. No matter how much he bites and kicks, um, all of these things will come to pass. So covenant, whenever you study covenant, you'll see that a lot of times there's kind of like different stages of the same covenant. So we saw that Jonathan and David made that covenant together, and then we see this other part of it where David's going to be king over Israel, Jonathan will be next to him, and the two made a covenant before the Lord. And so this is just kind of like the last part to that, in that covenant. Now Jonathan unfortunately falls in battle and is not next to David whenever he becomes king. However, David did take Jonathan's son into his household, and kept his part of the covenant after Jonathan died. So, and death can actually, once one party in the covenant dies, the covenant is severed. That's why that marriage bond, whenever husband or wife dies and that marriage bond is gone, that covenant is over with, it's broken. So but David still took care of Jonathan's son um while he was king. So I just have Jonathan and David made a covenant before the Lord at Horesh. We see Jonathan going back to his house. But also Jonathan didn't come to him and say, "Oh, you know what, my father's not going to get you because da da da," and he didn't really have good military commanders and da da da, and you're a lot stronger. He encouraged him in the Lord, and that's where the crux of it is. So anything else for this part of it before we move into 19? So then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding with us in the strongholds at Horesh on the hill of Hakilah, and which is on the south of Jeshimon? Now then, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to do so, and our part shall be to surrender him into the king's hand." Saul said, "May you be blessed of the Lord, for you have had compassion on me. Go now, make more sure, and investigate, and see his place where his haunt is, and who has seen him there, for I am told he is very cunning. So look and learn about all the hiding places where he hides himself, and return to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And if he is in the land, I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah." Thoughts on 19 through 23?
Well, Saul looks like he again is contributing David getting away to being cunning. Um, instead of God's protection. So he's obviously, again, delusional. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it does show more of God's protection here for David for, being able to evade and definitely he's definitely covered and anointed and protected. So
Yeah, and I mean it's not fun. I mean he's like you know,
yeah.
around for his life and stuff. And but yeah, I mean it's just Saul is just so like, may you be blessed of the Lord, for you have had compassion on me.
Delusional.
Like Saul, you're not the victim here.
Yeah.
Like and then just, he's very cunning. So it's like he's taking everything he's doing and projecting it onto David.
Mhm.
There is a lot, like really deep psychological stuff going on here.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I actually copied and pasted some of the sermon notes from Farag's sermon on this. It says a couple of thoughts here concerning a delusional demon possessed Saul who's so deceived he actually believes God is blessing him. This is textbook behavior for any man who, in his stiff necked arrogance and obstinance, fancies himself walking in perceived righteousness. It's evidenced by Saul accusing an innocent David of being very crafty, an accusation that could be rightfully levied upon Saul himself. Charles Spurgeon, in speaking to Saul being delusional, writes Saul had come to regard himself as the injured party, and he dared to introduce God's name into his hypocritical speech, thus showing that he had lost all moral sense and was under a strong delusion to believe a lie. By a course of sin, a bad man may at least convince himself that he is right and even fancy that God himself is in league with him. The Lord save us from so terrible a state of mind. So terrible and delusional is Saul's state of mind that he actually believes that the reason David has escaped here to for is that he's crafty. The truth of the matter is David has escaped not because of his craftiness. David has escaped because of his God, heretofore delivering him. The reason I point this out is because Saul is so unhinged that his reason and logic have fled from him as fast as David has fled from him. So I put that in there because I thought that just really,
It did. Well said. Yeah. That's
mm-hmm,
great.
it summed it up. And there's so much, I think there's so much application to what we're seeing in here. Um, I was thinking when I was thinking upon this morning, I was just like, oh, people, just like the different decisions that are being made by people. And I think that we can all say that we've been in situations where we've had kind of all of this going on. Um, and then it's like, well, what decision are we going to make? Um, and I also think that, we should take heed and look when we're in a situation, look at it and say, well, am I being delusional? You know, am I thinking I'm in the right and that God's on my side when maybe I'm not? Have I done something? Um, and we see David, he's not delusional. When he did something, he took responsibility for it and then he moved on. Or Saul, there's none of that. There's none of that. There's no moving on. There's no changing it. There's no nothing. He's just stuck in it. And he's so delusional. He thinks God's blessing him and that he's the victim. And there's just no change. So then they arose and went to Ziph before Saul. Now David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon and Arabah to the south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David, and he came down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard it, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Saul went out on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain, and David was hurrying to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were surrounding David and his men to seize them. But a messenger came to Saul saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid on the land." So Saul returned from pursuing David and went to meet the Philistines. Therefore, they called that place the Rock of Escape. All right, insights into 24 through 29.
God once again helps David
Mm-hmm.
using the enemy.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, the Philistines attacking Israel is not really a good thing, but yeah, he used the enemy to help David. Saul has to go fight the Philistines now. Um, so yeah.
Well, you mean Senator the tree with a spare. I mean,
Well, yeah.
clarify his fighting. I need to let that go.
Yeah, from now on, anytime you see a guy underneath a tree, you're gonna be like, yeah, no. um, yeah, yeah, God is certainly yes, I mean things are getting pretty these people had, the Ziphites uh were on Saul's side. They were against David. They were going to rout him out and hand him over to Saul. And we see that things got pretty close here. And then God used the enemy to distract Saul and to save David. And so they called that place the Rock of Escape. Um, so there you go. Let's see. Couple of cross references. She had us go to James 1 through 8. And says, James, bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes who are dispersed abroad, greetings. Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without any doubting, for the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that person ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double minded man, unstable in all his ways. So James is he just says it. So it's James is pretty fast and furious. There's a lot packed into James, and he just kind of just lays it all out there. Um, so consider it all joy when you encounter various trials. So that's encompassing David. David's encountering various trials. Main one, Saul. Um, and then there's also the temptation to lie to the priest, and things like that, or who am I running to, that kind of thing. So some of our trials are of our, we bring those because of our choices, and then some of them are just kind of from other people's choices. But it's testing your faith and producing endurance. And so we see that in David. Definitely has tests of faith. Sometimes he passes a test, sometimes he doesn't. Um, but it's producing endurance in him. Um, and it's the same in our walk. The more tests we pass, the more likely we are to pass the next one. And not to have to repeat the one we just pressing on, producing endurance. And then if you lack wisdom, ask of God, to ask in faith. So ask in faith without doubting. And so just like David, we can go to God and we can ask in faith, and we can actually get an answer. He will answer us. God is for us. He is not against us. even when we sin. I mean, that's just, we sin. And so even when we do, um, he's still for us and not against us. He's for us because he gave us Christ. He gave us a way out. And all we have to do is run to him and confess it. And he's not just gonna, smack us around and yell at us and stuff like that. I mean, he just takes us in and he helps us out, and it's like, okay, this is what's next. And we see that with David. We have the, okay, this is what's next. I'm growing you. I am producing endurance in you. Um, so we see in this last Psalm 54, save me, God, by your name, and vindicate me by your power. Hear my prayer, God, and listen to the words of my mouth. For strangers have risen against me, and violent men have sought my life. They have not set God before them. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is a sustainer of my soul. He said things like this before. He's getting down to the crux of it. He will pay back the evil to my enemies and destroy them all in your faithfulness. Willingly I sacrifice to you. I praise your name, Lord, for it is good. For he who has saved me from all trouble, and my eye has looked with satisfaction upon my enemies. Um, so our enemies are God's enemies. Anybody comes up against his kids, it's going to be a problem. So, chapter theme: God delivers Keilah through David and delivers David from Saul. So, any insights before we close out 23?